Everyone. Welcome to the webinar tonight. I'm Steve Jones of the Humboldt Trails Council. I'll be doing a talk on Avenza, a mapping app for smartphones. And if there are any questions during the presentation, there is a Q&A function usually found at the bottom of your screen. And feel free to use that Q&A function to ask any questions. And then after the last slide, I will take any questions. Let's see, I have one already. So without much further ado, I will go to the presentation. Okay, so this is brought to you by the Humboldt Trails Council. Please check out our website at humtrails.org. Most of you probably already know that we support local trails in any way we can. Okay, my webinar is Finding Your Way. You are here, and you will note the blue dot there. So this is just like when you're, looking at the map at the mall, you'll see the blue dot. One of the differences is that the blue dot on an Avenza map will also have a triangle on top of the blue dot that shows which way your smartphone happens to be pointing at the moment. So this is a free app, and the Avenza store has plenty of free maps. They also have paid maps. That's how they make their money, that and selling a pro version of the app. And tonight I'm going to concentrate on local trails. This is really a worldwide application, depending on where you can get your maps. So we'll start out in the city of Arcata. So the app will use your smartphone's GPS functionality to locate your position on a geo-reference map. And these maps that you will download, the geo-reference part is there are layers in the map, within the map, that give the longitude and latitude, give the altitude, and then the app can read that and let you know where you are on that map. So we're kind of going to cover just the basics today, installing the app, downloading a map, using that map. There's plenty more functionality in this. There's an Avenza.com website that details a lot of the functionality. They have a YouTube channel as well that has some training aspects to it. So if you get deeper into it, there's plenty more to see and learn there. The book at the right chronicles the history of GPS and the science behind it. You won't need any of that to use this app, but it's a pretty fascinating book, and how it's changing our culture and our minds is very interesting. As I understand it, GPS is just a highly accurate clock, and a number of satellites up there will depend on just the signal from your smartphone, and then how quickly it comes back to triangulate where your position is. So I don't know how many of you have the app installed already, but we'll start out with, if you don't have the app, it's going to the Apple Store, the Google Play Store, doing a search for Avenza and then installing the app. The formatting and layout will probably look different on your device, but the principles are all the same. And once you install that, it'll ask you if you want to open it, or you'll open it from an icon if you already have it installed. And it comes without any maps at all. So there's a folder called My Maps, and another store, a different store, the Avenza store, little shopping cart icon down below. And you can click on that and go to their store. Now, you can set a location, a keyword, that funnel-shaped item on the right-hand side are filters. I find you can see on the map, there's some numbers there, 30 plus, 11, 29. Those are the number of maps that are to be found in that locale. So it's the more filters you can set, the closer you can get, the less you'll have to scroll through on the left-hand side. So if you know exactly what you're going for, you can put the title of the map in keywords and get right to it. So here we're going to choose the free Ridge Trail map, and you can click on the free button, and then that will change to download. You can click on download. It'll start processing right there as it converts the PDF to a form that the app can use. Then it's back to My Maps, and here we have the Arcata Community Forest, Arcata Ridge Trail map. And you just tap on that and it opens up in Avenza. And if you were anywhere on the map, the blue dot will show up. For instance, in this example, here we are near the northern end of the Ridge Trail. Smartphone is pointing northwest. And you can move the map around. You can pinch it or contract it, make it bigger or smaller. You can spin it around and rotate it. You can do all those things that you can do with most any image or map on a smartphone. And the similarity that most of us have is to Google Maps, which has the blue dot that shows you where you are, which uses GPS to locate you. But the difference is Avenza stores those maps. So it's not relying on cell data to work. You can use the app entirely offline. So because GPS is satellite served, not cell phone tower served, you don't need them at all. So wilderness areas, out of range, it really doesn't matter with Avenza. There are controls at the bottom of the screen. There's a bullseye icon on the far left that you click on that and it will locate you right in the center of the map. There's a pin next to it that allows you to put place marks in a location and to put a caption on that place mark, attach a photo to it. Very handy for starting points, stopping points. This bar right here allows you to, you can pull up on it with your finger, and that shows you your tracking, your navigation. We'll get into that a little more later. once you put things like place marks or a track on that, you'll be able to see them by clicking on this pin here. And then the three dots here will bring up a context menu that gives you some more selections like recording and GPS track as well. So here is that center bar pulled up, and you can see we're in the tracking portion here. So if I wanted to, I could, right now it's already recording a track, say, and this would allow me to pause and this would allow me to stop it. You'll also have your average speed, a walking pace with stopping, your current speed, what distance you've gone, and the duration of your tracking so far. So here is a completed track in another free map, the Arcata Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary. We have a loop that goes all the way around. We'll have the info on how long that loop is. We have placed a pin right here. So, and this stays with your map unless you intentionally delete it. Here is the same loop, but done on another map from the store, another free map from the store, the Arcata Street Map. This map is a little more updated than the Marsh and Wildlife Sanctuary map because it was done in 2019 rather than 2015. So it has things like the Bay Trail going right through the marsh in there. Very handy. And then my pin, when I click on it, I can see my caption is Bridges Old and New, and then there's a little thumbnail photo in there that shows the old bridge, which was just for the old wooden bridge by the sewage treatment plant for strolling through the marsh, and then the new high-tech aluminum bridge that is right beside it. So if we want to go a little further afield, what I have plugged into the store is Redwood National and State Parks. And there is a download for Redwood National and State Parks. It's 2.9 megabytes, which is not very big as these maps go. You can see the one above it is considerably bigger as well as the one below it. But we're going to download that, let it process, and then open it up. And this is a map. If you don't need the topographical features, this is a very good trail map for Redwood National Park and then all the state parks that are associated with it. So right here, our location puts us on the gravel bar right outside the Tall Trees Grove. This is an interesting hike down to the Tall Trees Grove that really tests the limits of GPS, because you need that clear path, open sky to get a good GPS fix, and you are not going to get that in a redwood forest, particularly the Tall Trees Grove. But if you move out to the wide gravel bar of Redwood Creek, you'll find it picks you up and locates you automatically. So those who like more detail on the maps, you can, in the Avenza map store, are USGS 7.5 topos. And when I worked in an outdoor store, I learned to really love these topos, that the amount of detail, staring at them, dreaming of trips, So this was the reason I got into Avenza to begin with. And there's a very clever thing to Avenza that you can download a number of adjoining topo maps and basically link them all together. So you would do that by, from the My Maps thing, is adding a collection, and that adds a special folder for these linked together maps. So we're going to call this one Redwood Creek. And so you go to the store after you add this from inside your folder, and you can choose, in this case, I'm choosing 3 7.5-minute topos, the Oric, the Rogers Peak, and the Bald Hills. If you can download them all at once, then that'll save you a lot of time. I lose my filters when I go back and forth between the store. I lose my keywords. So this is a little quicker here. And you can click on one, you can download it, and then you'll see it processing, and then you can click on another. So I have Bald Hills right above Rogers Peak, so that one's already downloaded because it says open map. Once you get all 3 of them, you can either open the map from here or go back to your My Maps folder. And the way I know which maps I want is to look at the quadrangle location key in the lower right-hand corner of the topo maps. Shows you how they join together, which ones are adjoining. And you can, it's a little bit of the chicken and egg here too. If you already had this, you could figure out which maps and download them all at once. So you can do that from a paper map, or you can also download these maps to, say, a desktop directly from the USGS for free as well. Or you can download one of them and then look at the quadrangle key and figure out which other ones you want to download. And as long as they're all in that same collections folder, they will join together. So here the 3 of them are in my Redwood Creek folder. And I can tap on any one of these, it really doesn't matter. And then it opens up, and you can do the same, press the little bullseye icon to locate yourself on the map. And if you're not on this one, if you're one of the other ones, it'll kind of scoot you over there. You can see in the upper left there, there's the 3 maps, how they are situated next to each other. Very similar to how it would look in the quadrangle key. And you can basically just walk off one map right onto another. Sometimes you'll see that blue dot on the white border around the map, but doesn't mean that you're in limbo. You just move it over until you get on the correct map. So the same thing applies to Trinity Alps collection, that you can have a collections folder called Trinity Alps and put a number of linked topos on there. Once you go to the store from inside that folder, you'll see all those 7.5-minute maps. If you can put in the, here I have Trinity County, California for a location. You can put in some keywords. You can set some filters. But what I found is that the newer, more modern maps that are pretty small, less than 10 megabytes, they didn't have the trail layer in them. So that's really what I wanted for the wilderness area. So fortunately, they do have some bigger maps. They call them historical maps. They could be 20 years old, 22 years old in this case, but those do have the trails on them. So once again, it's trying to figure out how many maps you want, which maps, and downloading them all at once. But you can see these historical maps are about 40 megabytes. So I try not to download every single 7.5 minute map of the Trinity Alps. That would start to really cut into your storage on your smartphone. So it's figuring out which ones you need for the trip. Once in a while, you have to jettison some of these maps just to make some space, and then you can reload them as you need them. So it's very similar in that you download them all, you go back to your My Maps, and you have a number of maps. You can just tap on any one of them and it'll basically open up the whole group. And you can say, okay, well, this locates us right on Triforest Peak, looking roughly northeast, and there's Mount Shasta peeking up behind the ridge there. Also, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see all the maps and how they fit together and where you are in the group of maps. So this is very handy for going off trail in the Trinities. Triforest Peak is not on a trail, so you can use it once you go to the top of the trail. You can set it as a destination if you want. There's a lot of things that you can do with this app that I won't go too deeply into tonight. Another use that I have found for Avenza is the local cycling club put on an event at the Blue Lake Hatchery Ridge Trail System. And we needed course marshals to be in a certain spot, course marshals who may have not been really familiar with the course. So we had a group of volunteers from the HSU Cycling Club. We assigned them all, as in 2G, 4G, 3G, 2F, to a spot on a georeference map, and they had Avenza on their phones. So basically they were able to walk up or down the trail until the blue dot on their phone linked right up with the spot they were supposed to be, and then they were in position. And that worked extremely well for getting a group of people unfamiliar in a bunch of different locations. A paid map that I'll make a little pitch for here is the DeLorme Atlas and Gazetteer for California. It's a very broad scale topo map. This is the dog-eared copy that we carry in the car when we go to interesting places. It has a fair amount of trails, for instance, Trinity Alps trails on it. So if it's on your phone and you get out of the car and you decide you want to do a day hike up to one of the lakes, you'll have a map of it no matter where in California you are. And it's a little easier to carry on your day hike than the entire atlas. So some thoughts before we see if there's any questions here. Always pack a paper map backup. It can be a scan of a topo map or a topo map or something. Just tech is great. I love it, but phones occasionally brick on their own. They certainly do run out of battery power. Do all your map acquisition when you're on Wi-Fi or networked beforehand. You probably can download a pretty good sized map with 4G or LTE, but it will take a while and it will really hit on your data cap. And remember, you need a clear shot at the sky for a good GPS fix. So sometimes that means moving out from under the canopy, and then your phone will find the satellites. When I'm on the trail, I set my phone to airplane mode, and I reduce the brightness just to conserve the battery. On a multi-day trip, I'll bring along an auxiliary battery. I'm kind of looking into solar chargers now because the smartphone, while it's kind of a tether in some ways, is very handy as a camera, as a flashlight. You can put a podcast or a book on it, just darn handy stuff. So if you have questions or comments that don't get addressed in the Q&A session, or if you have tips on using Avenza that you'd like to share, if you would go to our website and use the contact form and pass that along, I'd really appreciate it. So right now, I'm going to bring up Avenza on the desktop here and start with some questions.
Steve, one question that's come up is whether the photos are embedded in the program.
You can embed photos in the place marks. So when you click on that pin there, and you can rename the place mark, you can add a photo, either from your camera or from storage on your device. So the classic thing that we were doing today down at the marsh was taking a picture of the amphitheater or whatever and putting a place mark there and adding a photo. I also had a question from Dan wondering about the tracking for your use in search and rescue. And the tracking is in that slide up bar, and we have tracking right here. It's just basically clicking on the arrow and it'll start tracking and make one of those loops like I showed with the Arcata Marsh. There's also a compass in here. I find that the compass works some places where the GPS doesn't. So if you're going through the woods and you basically need to keep heading north, but your GPS isn't giving you a fix, then the compass can be pretty handy for that. There's also a variety under navigation. You can create a route, you can navigate to a feature. So you can do that by coordinates. You can put a pin, say on Triforest Peak, and navigate to there. So there's tons of functionality in this that it's fun to explore. Reese, do we have other questions?
Yes, a couple. One is, have you used other mapping apps? And this person uses Gaia GPS app. And if you've used others, what features of Avenza do you think are better than others?
This is the only app that I've ever used. I downloaded it and never explored any alternatives to it. I believe all those mapping apps work pretty much the same. So some may have features that others don't, but that's an interesting concept. I may take a look at the Gaia.
And another participant wants to know if you would review one more time how to download Trinity Alps maps.
Certainly. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this, but we are recording this webinar, and we are going to, it will be on YouTube, and we will post a link on the HumTrails website. Okay, so if I wanted to add another map to my Trinity maps here, I would go to the store. And this says Humboldt County, but I would basically change it to Trinity County. So we can select Trinity County, California. We can search. And then it'll show us a ton of maps. So without putting a lot of other filters in there, I could scroll down till I find another 7.5-minute map. You see there's 15-minute maps in here. So here's a 7.5-minute map. And so I would just click the free on here. So you can see, unless you put a lot of filters in, you have a lot of choices. So here's the Diedrich one that'll get you to the trailhead for Canyon Creek. So I'll just click on free, click on download, and it'll download it and start processing.
Steve, another question is whether you can upload a series of GPS coordinates.
I'm not 100% sure I understand that, but you can. I know if you're trying to navigate to a destination and you put the GPS coordinates in it, it'll take you to that point on the map. Also, what I've shown here is a lot of downloading maps from the store. And with the free app, there is no limit on, or not a limit that I found, on how many maps you can download from the store. You can, however, import maps from other sources. When I started out on this, before I understood the 3-map limit, I would download maps from the USGS store and then sideload, import them into the program. But then I quickly ran into that 3-map limit there. So you can certainly get maps from other sources, and if they're georeference maps, it'll work on them. That's basically the mountain bike course map is a georeference map that a local engineer made. So what I found is that there are surveyors and engineers out there that make their own maps. Of course, the city of Arcata makes their own maps, but they're nice enough to put them on the Avenza store for us, so we won't run into that limit. If you do import other maps and you run into that limit, you just have to delete one map in order to load another.
Another question that's come up is whether you're using a desktop version for this presentation and whether there is a Mac version.
Well, that's a funny question. According to Avenza.com, there is no desktop version. But because I use a Chromebook and I can run Android programs on it, this on my desktop is basically the Android version. So if you're lucky enough to have a desktop that runs Chrome OS and Android, I find using the desktop version a lot easier on my 65-year-old eyes, but it doesn't seem as though that's available for Mac or Windows users, or even Linux. What else do we have, Reese?
That's all the immediate questions. Please participate by asking any additional questions you have on the Q&A feature. None coming up.
Okay. Well, I want to thank the participants for coming tonight and viewing this. And once again, the contact form through our website, if you do come up with additional questions or comments, if you go back to the website, within the week, we should have a link to the recorded YouTube version of this. And thank you very much for your support of local trails. I know it's important to us all. And I'll bid you good night.